Our guest is Courtney Erichhorn, and she is the new Assistant Superintendent of USD 475, and she's going to talk about herself, her background, and she worked in special education for a long time. Not a real long time because she's really young. We're glad to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Miller, for that introduction, and I also appreciate the invitation. When I grabbed my phone, got the invite, thought, that's a perfect opportunity to get out and kind of share our community and our schools. So thank you for that. Also fortunate I've seen several of you right out and about that are in this room, and so again, appreciate the opportunity to be here. So when Dr. Miller and I talked, we had kind of shared what would be the focus of this conversation, and primarily wanted to provide an opportunity for you all to learn more about me. And then we, dive into special education a little bit, since that's an area dear to my heart, and then also just expertise there, and then a little overview about what's going on in school. Okay, so first and foremost, was born in Northeast Wisconsin, but raised in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So often referred to as a Uper. If you've not ever visited there, but I highly recommend, a beautiful place. And so in 2013, I made my way to Fort Riley, Junction City by way of the Army. My husband was active duty at the time. Prior to that, we had two other duty stations. So we had been at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, and then here at Fort Riley. And Fort Riley was actually on our wish list. I'll tell you that's because of the recreational and the outdoor activities and those types of things, because we do enjoy the outdoors. So I think it took about 2 days to find out that we had been selected to come this way. So I came here in 2013. Before that, though, that's a bit of the personal journey. I was a graduate of Northern Michigan University, where I earned my bachelor's degree, and it was a dual major in secondary English education and then also special education. Then I went on a master's degree at Michigan State University in special education. And I also hold an education specialist degree in educational administration, with an emphasis in special education administration. So kind of see a theme there, right, of how that goes. When thinking about how I got to this journey, I reflect on this all the time. And so growing up, school was my favorite place to be. And so I really thought about how could I take that energy that I loved about school and transfer that to other people around me. And so that was really a prime piece. And the other one was that I was around lots of students that had Down syndrome, for instance, and would volunteer my time at summer camp and other things of that nature. And so got really familiar with just diversity and learning about students that were different than myself. And so again, loved that opportunity too. So when it came time to decide on what I wanted to do at college, there was really two poles. One was education, and the other one is I also really enjoy school of law. Okay, and so if you want to believe those two ideas together, you get special education. Special education's got a lot of regulation, lots of federal guidelines, things that you really just have to know about and be able to emphasize. So that work in special education got me to do both of those things. So that's how I ended up in that avenue. Once I had accomplished my first job at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, for Lawton Public Schools as a special education teacher, did that for a bit, and really have done a gamut of special education teacher work. So all of my teacher time has been in that field. And so done things from a specialized program, behavior strategy, to co-teaching opportunities where I worked in tandem with the general education teacher, all the way to just the general resource. So when you think about just being in a classroom where the students that need additional support come in and out all day long. So I've done a continuum of those. Junction City, also special education teacher, Junction City Middle School the first year, and then Junction City High School after that. After I did that for 3 years here, moved into an instructional coach position for a couple of years, where I really found my niche for wanting to be a leader. And I, not only equate that with kind of drive and initiative, but also being surrounded by some really great leaders. One of the most important things is that when people recognize skills in you is that they point it out. They say, here's something that I think you could really do, and let's bring you along. And so I've just been extremely grateful to the people that have been alongside me to push me and ask for new opportunities and continue to just, essentially branch me beyond what I initially mentioned. So that's when I was working on my educational specialist and admin degree, but I was being an instructional coach. Once I finished that, I did move into administration, and that's where I've done for the last 7 years. And so first was the assistant director of special education, and did a lot of work around professional development in that area, really working on building capacity of our staff, which then led me into the school improvement job, director of school improvement, looking at just across the entirety of our school district, how do we continuously enhance student achievement? How do we identify the issues that we have and tackle them in a systemic fashion? And then the director of special education job, which was always kind of on my radar as a goal, was open a couple years in a row. And the first year kind of passed up that opportunity. When it came back around the second time, it's kind of asked to take that on. And so last year moved into the executive director of special education role, and learned a lot. Right, there's a ton to learn every year, and then this year was fortunate as we've continued to evolve as a school district. Stepped into the associate superintendent role while also maintaining that executive director of special education kind of counterpart. So, done a lot of different things the last few years. Was just sharing that hopefully at some point we'll settle in a little bit more, but I do appreciate the continuous evolvement and learning and growing. And I think that there's been sort of would share, there's so much novelty in the work, and we're continuously not only talking about growth with our students, but with ourselves too. So, and just appreciated the opportunities that have been afforded to me. So that's kind of a little bit about where I've been and what I'm doing. I kind of did not ever see myself being on the general education administration side, but my most favorite job so far in my career was the director of school improvement job, and really taking a strategic planning lens and analyzing problems, looking at data, and then really just bringing about joy and excitement about changing things and working towards a common goal. So that has really fueled a different lane for me and has been super successful. So I just now take it as it comes, right? Whatever life's journey is for me, then kind of unfold and we'll go from there. So that's the personal and professional. I suppose I should also mention, my husband told you that he was active duty here. He since gotten out of the Army and earned his degree at K-State after having the GI Bill. And so he also works at USD 475 as an operations manager. So that's wonderful as well. Kind of make 475 a family affair. So we have 3 kiddos in town too. So one at Junction City Middle School in 7th grade, and then a 5th grader at Spring Valley, and a 1st grader at Spring Valley. So we're quite busy. So any initial questions or?
Talk about the different categories and the experience you've seen of either growing or diminishing in the categories. Special education.
Yeah, yes. So we've done, last year we did kind of our first role at kind of doing a state of special education, right, for our school district, and talking about what that means. And so special education, really what it boils down to, there's 13 federal categories that students have to qualify under. And it's anywhere from maybe a physical impairment all the way to something like autism, or maybe another health factor that could inhibit ability to learn. So maybe it's ADHD to a certain extent, those types of things. And so those categories, we are all the same across every state. And then what we have to do is interpret the law based on our state guidelines. And so within that, we have to look at students of, 1, do they meet one of those 13 eligibility areas? And 2, do they require specially designed instruction? Which means that the student needs schooling that is above and beyond what would typically be awarded within a general education environment. Okay, so we look at those things. Over time, our prevalence rate in special education in Erie County schools has definitely increased. And I will tell you that there's a couple of different variables with that, but one of them is just matches the national trend. So across the entire nation, right, we're seeing that where more and more students are falling into a category of needing more than just what that standard education is offered. Locally, the national average is about 15% special education identification. We've been fluctuating right around 19, sometimes up to 21%. So it changes year to year, but it's larger than would be the national average. Some of that is we have a wide continuum of services that we can offer at Erie County Schools, which is a celebration, which brings a lot of families to us because they opt to come here so they can receive this. The other would be through our partnership with Fort Riley. They have an exceptional family member program that outlines here are the particular things that are available for families. And when they are selecting duty stations, they are often categorized to go to board, right? And again, those services are available. So we see that. In terms of the categories of eligibility, there has been shifts in those things. It used to be that we would see quite a bit of multiple disabilities, for instance, or maybe what we would think are more of an intellectual of disability, and that has really morphed over time to be more in the autism area or in other health impairment, which would be the things like ADHD, struggles with executive functioning, all of that sort of thing. So those are usually our larger categories now that have changed over time. And often those are the categories that come with additional assistance, like students that would need more, right, than maybe a student that has a physical impairment and needs some accommodations for access. So that has changed. We're getting ready to do our initial upload on September 15th, and every year that has bumped up a bit. And so this year we have over 1,500 students out of our 7,000 to start the year that are receiving services. So that's the vast amount. We talk in our department that with the transiency, students moving in and out of Fort Riley or just changing schools, that we typically would see or service students, potentially 2,000 of them in a school year, which is a lot. And so we do, it's a big department and they're very proud of that, work very hard. Tough jobs, but very rewarding. So yeah, we're continuing to see exactly what Dr. Miller kind of that increase over time. So looking for constant ways to recruit great staff, retain great staff, and build capacity in them, training and professional learning.
Can you talk about the impact of the Department of Education and all of that turmoil that's going on and funding for special education?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's quite a bit of uncertainty, right, when it comes to federal funding and just also kind of that national support for what special education looks like. And we belong to several state organizations, national organizations, and this topic comes up regularly. And I'll tell you that in most cases, the conversation has just been around, regardless of what happens, the students are going to be here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to assure families that we have these things in place. We're going to take care of your students, and we're going to work through those challenges as they ensue. And essentially, the system can only go to a certain point, right? And then it requires change. So we're hopeful that over time, through advocacy, which we have a lot of people in our corner advocating, state level and federal level, about what that means. And then parents themselves, right? Parents, patrons, guardians, community members, they've kind of shared the concern in that area. And so that allows those things to be rethought. And we've had a lot of, I would say, roller coasters, right? Over the course of the year where it seems like we're going down this avenue and then it suddenly changes. So really, we've just talked about keeping the main thing, the focus on the kids. Here's what we can control. And as this information comes in, then we'll adjust course and accommodate us. That's the Fortunately, right now, we're in a good place. We have what we need. Could there always be more? Absolutely, but we have what we need to provide what's absolutely necessary to students.
What do you like about your job you're doing now, from special education to now being assistant superintendent?
Yeah, that's great question, Bobby. So, well, first, I just tell you, I loved when we started this meeting with Optimist grades. I thought, goodness, this could be maybe my first degree, right? Because that's just one of the things really take pride in is just joy and bringing a little sunshine to the job. Education is tough, and so really just that thought of optimism and joy is what we have to continuously instill in people. And so with that associate superintendent role, it allows to have broader impact, right? So it's nice to work in one area, but sometimes you don't see the bigger thing. And so what has enabled that is, again, the larger impact, getting to know our principals and staff a bit more. I've really enjoyed that. But additionally, it's brought this sense of we can do this work, and all of these students are a student. So we've been able to collaborate a bit more between special education side enables and then general education, and again, how do we look at the entirety of our system? So how is our system accommodating and responsive to all kids, and then how do we build the layers of support from there? So I think those are things that stand out to me, that teaching and learning is at a broader focus, and we looked at all kids and not in separate departments.
Besides the federal funding, what other challenges have you come upon?
Yeah. So the challenges, while many, there's the good part is we talk about being problem solvers. And so particularly, you hear about retention and recruitment of staff, right? Highly qualified staff. So just continuing to really share that narrative that education is a great place to be and it's good work and it's impactful and it's important. And so getting people to come alongside us. When I was mentioning that people have done that for me, that's the goal for myself. When I identify leaders, identify individuals that could really come in the ranks that we need to do that. Walk alongside them, model it, and grow them. In the special education department, that's how we've been surviving, so to speak. We've taken a lot of our paraeducators and we've identified that they have skills in certain areas. We've put them in places where they can learn some more on the job training, and then we've helped them essentially grow into teachers. And we offer some reimbursement on tuition and some of those other elements. And so that's really how we sustain. So that would be one of them. The other would be, just the needs of students. I think you all probably hear that, right? That need has just arisen. Like students come to us a little bit less prepared than maybe they would have been prior to COVID. And so we're talking about just our ability to interact in a successful manner, our ability to kind of attain to a task, right? Ability to regulate my emotions or just have that language acquisition. So all of those things, just the needs are different, which has made us, the kids are still the kids, but it's changed where we've had to put up resources and it's changed how we've had to think about what we're doing and when we're doing it. So that would be another piece. And then just the time, right? Time is always the resource you don't have enough of. And so there's so many things that we've identified to work on, and it's figuring out which one is the most important right now and will have our greatest impact. And selecting that one and going through it and staying the course for a while. A lot of times, the theory of change requires 3 to 5 years sometimes to really settle in and have some good implementation. And, when problems are arising or things are coming at you, you can have that tendency to kind of redirect course, right? We're going this way, but now suddenly we go over here. And so it's been really for our team to just have conversations about, we're hearing that and we see where it's at, how does that fit into our plan? And is that something we do now or is it something next time? So I think those would be the key ones that come to mind.
Since COVID, when I was still working, there was a 504 plan. Is that still in existence?
Yeah.
So it was kind of a transition from regular ed and maintaining the regular ed services, but also potentially could move into special education identification. If those are still in place, is that area growing after COVID also?
Also a great question. So there's many layers of support actually in school. So a lot of times when, you might interact with individuals and say, my child is having a hard time at school. And the first thing that comes to mind is IEP, which is individual education plan, which is special education, right? So those things happen there. But there's so many other avenues that we do. So we have just the regular education, right? School that's going on. And then we have this layer that we call MTSS, our multi-tiered systems of support. And so what we would do is we screen every student in the areas of reading and math and their social emotional skills. And then from there, we essentially kind of put them into groupings to say, when we have a 30-minute period, you're going to go around, you're going to learn these skills a little bit deeper. And that's for every kid. Right? So we have that layer. Then you have this layer of what we call student intervention teams, called SIT. And so those are students that require very specific work that have not yet gone to a Section 504 plan, or they haven't been identified for special education. And so in that process, a team of educators that really wraps around that student, so it might be the counselor, or it could be was definitely the general education teacher, the parent, but it could be also the nurse if it's something that's relevant to health, any individual that's relevant to the team, right? They come together for that student and make a plan, and then they monitor how that student is doing over time. If we don't have success, then we kind of go to the next level. So we have general education, we have MTSF, we have student intervention team. If those things are not successful, we often find what Dr. Miller is referring to as Section 504, which is all part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so Section 504 helps allow for accessibility to education because there's some sort of limiting life event or activity that's taking place. So for instance, it could be a student that has very significant diabetes. And so in order for them to be at school in a safe manner and to access their education, we got to talk about how are we regulating their blood sugar? How often are they going to the nurse? Those types of things. And so that's ADA and Office of Civil Rights, all of that. And a Section 504 plan, interestingly enough, really you can use that outside of school. So it's beyond a school element. So we have individuals that are adults that might have a Section 504 that work for us. They can take it to college with them. Like there's other areas where those services happen. And then if that's not enough, if it's not just about accessibility, but it requires a different type of instruction, that's when we would go to the special education. So there's kind of this whole stair step. It's not necessary that all of these things happen before this happens. It's just the process. So sometimes you have the students that start here and go all the way to here. Sometimes you have the ones that go up and they stop at this point. Sometimes you have the students that start here and they go backwards. So it's the continuum is always moving and it's individualized to the students and responsive to their needs. But yeah, overall, every one of those categories has grown, which has then also changed our conversation at the table, right? Because you can't intervene yourself into every situation, right? So we call that, we have this triangle. And typically what we would be doing is looking to say, is anything that we are doing, you know, as a business, so to speak, is it good for 80% of our employees? Is it good for 80% of our students? Is it just for 80% of the masses, you know? And if it is, then, okay, you have a pretty strong core, right? You have a really good tier 1 system. If there are not, and suddenly, you know, your core, your base down here is only good for 40%, well, then that's probably your weak point, right? Thinking about accessibility and availability to all. And so what we found over time is our triangle maybe has tipped a little bit, right? That it's upside down. There's a lot of individuals that need additional support. So it's changed our conversation. That I guess that to go back to Bobby's question, that has helped me have that lens to say, okay, yes, we do have needs in special education. We do have needs in Section 504, but across the board, that number is so large that that means down here, we got to change our initial plan of what we are doing. So that way it is more acceptable for a larger number of patrons. It's just like we went to a different communication system this year in Parent Square. So at the end of the year, if we look at our thinking, okay, we don't have 80% of our people that have access to that or it's not working for them, that might be a conversation about doing something different. So we're really looking for that 80% mark of anything that we do is working out. And if not, we need to change our process.
What's the communication system that you changed?
Yeah, so Parent Square. So Parent Square is an all-encompassing communication system. So prior to that, we'd have newsletters, for instance, that were going out, or we'd have some individuals might use a system called Class Dojo, and someone might use a system called Remind. We just had a lot of different areas. And so one of our strategic plan goals is on parent and guardian engagement, and communication is an element of that. And some of the feedback that had been provided regularly at our community meetings or just in school surveys was that there's so many things to look at and they're on all these different platforms. And so I thought, well, what's a better way, right, than to take that information, put it into action by combining all those functions. So Parent Square, which is utilized across a lot of national schools and then other ones here in our local area, just consolidates all that into one place. So parents have accessibility, but it's, again, a one-stop shop as opposed to having to go into all these different areas.
Is staffing still a challenge?
Yes and no. So this year, our amount of new staff that we on was significantly less than it has been historically. So in the last probably 5-ish years, we would typically see around 115, 130 new staff. This year we had around 90. So that meant that we retained some more people. But in addition to that, we filled a lot of things internally. So while we're still working with people, you know, some of them to work on their degrees, we have our spots filled for the most part. Special education is usually one of the areas of greatest challenge. And this year we started with significant less vacancies. And really at the end of the day, in special education, you have to fill everything no matter what. So that means having a contracted partner or leaning on another school district and bringing over some of their people. You have to provide the service no matter what. So it's just, we've been able to keep some of our own people and not have to outsource it to 2%. But if you know anyone, you know, who wants to be in education, is a speech language pathologist, those are always a huge need, or an educational psychologist. Those are great areas and great fields of significant need.
Courtney, one of the reasons people struggle as special ed teachers is all the paperwork that they have to work with. Has that lessened or increased?
Also a great question. So remember I was mentioning about the fact of anytime you work with legislation or laws, right, there's a lot of accountability that comes with that. So in special education, that is one of the biggest pieces. And so we have a process handbook from the state level, but 300 pages. And what we do is we take that internally and we make it into our own standard operating procedure, which is still about 100 pages. Right? So trying to make it less and more digestible, but outlines really what those procedures are. In terms of the paperwork, every time that there is a case, okay, so really what happens is we have the law as it stands, but every time somebody has a essentially a claim against it, right, and we establish this case law, it might change what we are doing. And often it results in having to do something more. And then rarely ever does it take it away, right? And so we are often finding that based on, okay, last year there was case law in the 10th Circuit around this particular area of a meeting notice. So now all meeting notices have to do X, Y, and Z. And so it does change what we're doing and does add more. So paperwork absolutely is one of the largest parts of the job. And it is the one that our staff, so to speak, it's a little bit of a thorn in their side. And I say that in the manner that they get into education to be, and they get into education to work with the kids. And it's really hard to find that balance between all of your compliance measures and the paperwork and how do I spend time teaching kids. And so what we've kind of worked on, again, is to have the standard operating procedures to streamline it. We have multiple areas of just viewing and vetting throughout our system that gives people feedback. We have to build in time for them to come up. So we've started things like a health night where they will come up to the district office for 2 hours one time a month, and we'll sit down and we'll look at everything that they need to work on, and we'll provide that coaching, get it done and off their plate. So we just had to be creative with that and really supporting teachers and ensuring that they get their plan times and that they get, lunches and all of the things, making sure really protected. But yeah, the paperwork has not gone away. In fact, it kind of increases time. So yeah, we have to be innovative in thinking about how to go about that. And it's tough because, even if you're bringing others to help in that area, you have to be well trained in it. And so you don't want everybody just coming, it's great to have a partner, but if they don't know what they're doing, then that becomes a little bit different. So but always take feedback and ideas on how to improve that a little bit. We shift focus, but the paperwork drives the plan that we're doing. And so it's our first point of contact often with families where they get to sit down and look at what we're doing with their child. And if we don't do that right, it opens ourselves up to an opportunity to, break down that trust level a little bit. So we want to be really good at paperwork, but it's not the be all end all, but it's often where a complaint might start. This is something that's been written in a legally binding contract, so to speak.
Are there special education coordinators in each of the secondary buildings?
Yeah, that's also a great question. So we shifted a little bit this year. So prior, we had 3 special education administrators. Now this year we have 4, and we kind of distributed them a little bit differently. So we have a director, assistant director, we have a coordinator that was at just the high school level, and that individual has really moved to the secondary lines. Because what we found as the entirety of a school district, we're trying to create continuity in a pathway from 6th grade all the way to beyond high school. So that 6th through 12th is important for every student and important for special education as well. And so we brought in that scope of the job to really be about secondary coordination. So that person covers 6-12. And then we took our early childhood person and branched them up through elementary because we identified that was an area of need as well. And so that person works all early learning. And really in that coordination point, they're helping with evaluation staff, they're coaching individuals, they're looking at paperwork and giving feedback, and really providing lots of key professional learning opportunities. So, the system, it's constantly changing. We're looking at data, and what we have now might not be what we need next year or in 5 years. But for now, it really has come along in identifying what those gaps are and putting some in place. So we have those individuals. We have what we call data and compliance assistant. Read those, look at all of our data that before it gets loaded to the state and to the federal office, and go through every single IEP, single one that flows through, that goes to 2000 at the end of the year. So I hadn't mentioned when we think about just services and education, the special education world, it's also a bit more broad because we service private schools in the area. We also do juvenile detention center. We also would do homebound students. Sometimes there's different elements of homeschool depending on what the situation is there. gifted. Like there's a lot in the special education realm, and it's not just those kids that show up to school. We're going out and about in the community and partaking in that too. So our staff and providers are really impacting multiple areas of the community, and sometimes they don't even necessarily know.
Identified students can be served until they're 21, right?
That's correct. Yep. They can go to school all the way through the year of which they turn 21. So say they turn 21 even for the school year, they turn 21 in December, they get to finish the school year out and they're done. So we have the 18 to 21-year-old program for students are serviced if they need to stay and learn some additional transition skills, if they need to learn maybe some independent living skills, might still be, just learning life, right? How to use public transportation, how to make sure that they're ready to hold their own home, those types of things. So we have 18 to 21 as well.
Other questions? Good job, thank you.
Lottery
On my shoulders.
for today.
Okay.
So I need a ticket and the last three numbers, please.
All right. So last three numbers, 108.
I see